What's up, guys? JP here in the JP Gautreaux podcast, and today I have with me Alice. I want you guys to learn a little bit more about her life and how she started her business. So, Alice, thank you so much for accepting my interview. I know it was a very short notice, but we're here and we made it happen. Let's start a little bit with your background, okay? How was life growing up? Where were you born? And how was that whole thing?
So I never know how to answer that question, and so I'm throwing you a curveball right off the bat. But the reason is that I was born in California.
Okay.
I left when I was 5. Then I lived for a year in Honolulu, Hawaii. Then for 3 years in North Carolina, then in Switzerland, then back in North Carolina. And so essentially I grew up all over the place. And I think that's why I always feel a little bit like an outsider still, even at this point in my life, because we moved around so much when I was a child.
What was the reason why you guys were moving around so much?
My dad just didn't. He liked to move. He was he was like the old pioneers who always had to go further west. He liked to go from place to place. He was a piano professor. Mm-hmm. He also was on the spectrum. He was on the autism spectrum, and so that had a big influence on my childhood. But really, people always figure I was an army brat. I was not. I was the child of a musician.
That's what I was thinking at first.
And, basically somebody who liked to go from place to place. So that's...
Okay. After that, you went to... How was school? If you were moving around so much, how was your school years, your academic life at the beginning?
So I was a good student. My school was unusual because, for instance, part of my schooling was in a very small town in North Carolina. It was right after desegregation, and I actually went to a school that was, newly desegregated with a lot of African Americans, a lot of, Southern white people. It was a time of some conflict.
Right.
And my teachers were actually, some of my teachers were the teachers that had come from the African American segregated school and were now teaching both black and white children, and they were awesome. And so it was that's part of my schooling that I really remember. And I think even though it might not have been, sort of the most elite school to go to, it was a huge formative experience for me.
How do you think that shaped the way you see the world? If you grow up, especially at a time, because, for example, we didn't get to see that time. We only heard stories about them. We only read them in books. How was life at that time, especially for you, and how did it shape your future?
Well, I remember very well not going to the pool, the public pool sometimes, because that's when the African Americans were using the pool. I remember drinking fountains for colored people. That's what they were labeled, the colored drinking fountains and the other drinking fountains. And so what was very fortunate for me was that my mom was Swiss, and she was just the most inclusive and open-minded person in the world. And so she always made it clear that we were all the same, and that, we played with African-American children, we played with white children, we were the same. And that was not typical back then.
It wasn't normal.
It was not typical at all.
And it didn't make it easy growing up in a place where, hey, you're not supposed to drink from this water fountain because that's for people of a certain color. It's something that I think completely changes the way you think and the way you see life. Let's go a little bit forward now to your high school days. Mm-hmm. I think those are probably the most important time in somebody's life, just because that's when you start to develop your thinking and the way you see life. How was that like? Was that here in the United States?
So that's where my background gets a little confusing. So I was living in a small southern town, but my grandparents lived in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 13, I started feeling a little bit closed in the South and in that town. And so I asked my parents if I could go live with my grandmom in Switzerland, and they amazingly said yes. So I went off by myself to live with my grandparents. I went to school in Switzerland, and for 4 years I was basically Swiss. I spoke Swiss German, can you say Schweizerdeutsch?
I cannot, and I'm not going to try.
So that's, that's the word for Swiss German. I had Swiss friends. I basically, was Swiss. And then when it came time to go to college, I came back to the U.S.
Got it. At what age more or less you came back?
17.
17,
Yeah.
18?
Yeah.
All right. All right. After that, what happened? You went to college.
After
What was
that,
your major? What was college life like?
So my dad was a musician. It was, very common in our family to be artists. I went to art school. I went to Tyler School of Art in Pennsylvania, which is part of Temple University. And so, at that point I was, basically hanging out with a bunch of artists and, very creative education. And I'm still thankful for that to this day, because I think art education in the arts gives you a way of thinking outside the box.
Right.
Helps you with critical thinking. Even though I don't consider myself an artist anymore, I think it was the best kind of education.
All right. After college, what were you doing?
So after college, I waitressed a few years. That's what artists do a lot. So I was a waitress at a place called PT's in Philadelphia. That's also where I met my husband, Ray, who you know as well. He came in one night at about 11 p.m. because he'd been working late, and he ordered a Lorraine omelet.
I love how you remember it.
I remember every detail.
I hope Ray
but not
actually.
Not the next day. So what happened is apparently he took a liking to me. We chatted for a while. He came back the next day because he wanted to talk to me again. I had no clue who he was.
You're like, who are you again?
Right.
Okay.
So he had to start all over again. But in any case, that's how I met Ray, and I was a waitress. And then from that point on, I went back to school for a little bit in fashion, in clothing design, and I went to work for a while in a clothing manufacturing. I was designing the women's line.
What were you thinking about your future? Like, what is it that you wanted to be?
I always wanted to be a fashion designer. I mean, every little girl wants to be a fashion designer, right?
Okay.
So back then, at least. So that was, that was in the arts, fashion. So I started out, working in fashion. Then when I had my first son, Max, at that point I was traveling back and forth to New York all the time. It was a very demanding lifestyle in my job, and so I quit that. I started my first business. It was a baby accessories company, a small boutique
What year?
firm.
What year more or less was this?
Oh gosh.
I'm sorry, but we have to talk about that.
You asked me if there were any questions you shouldn't ask. No, so Max was born in 1987. So
Okay.
That's the.
So around that
year.
time?
Yeah.
Okay. So go again. You started your first business. Keep telling me a little bit more about
I
that.
started a baby accessories manufacturing company. We made quilts and bumpers and different accessories for nurseries. At the time, the look was kind of very frilly and pinks and blues, and I thought, especially little boys needed something that was like colorful and fun and graphic, and so that's the look that we were going after. After a couple of years of doing that, though, we also moved to, first to New Jersey and then to Florida. When we moved to Florida, I started realizing that making products for children was not fulfilling enough anymore, and that's what transitioned me into the nonprofit world, helping children start businesses. And that's when I started my first nonprofit, Kid Ventures.
Okay, let's go back to the products, because people think that once you start something you got to stay there forever, or if was there a time that you were okay, like I really don't want to do this anymore, or what happened that made you take that decision?
It was really my life kind of followed along with, or I should say my business followed along with my life. So at this point, my kids were getting older. I could see the needs in schools, in children. And I felt that, there were some aspects of being an entrepreneur that could really help children with their lives and their education, and that's why I decided to start a nonprofit helping kids with entrepreneurial skills.
And what was the name of the nonprofit?
It was called Kid Ventures.
How was that like, and what do you do for that time? It was here in Florida?
It was in Miami.
Okay.
And it was really taking the different aspects of my background and using them to help children. So Kid Ventures, it was an art-based entrepreneurial nonprofit, and kids in elementary through middle school would create small art-based products, greeting cards, coffee mugs, bookmarks, anything that was simple for them to design and create. And then they would sell those products, and then we built a curriculum around that to help them learn marketing skills, costing skills,
right.
How to figure out, the retail price for your product, all kinds of basic skills based around entrepreneurship. And we were able to get funded through Miami-Dade Foundation.
Okay.
And so that was the start of that nonprofit.
What do you think about the current system that we have in schools? What I'm talking about, it's, for example, we went to speak at my high school the other day, and I noticed that most kids are not learning about the real world. They live in a little bubble where nothing is really how it is outside of that little bubble. So most of them don't know anything about taxes, don't know anything about entrepreneurship, about a business. And I think what you were doing at that time was exactly what we need in the school system, especially here in Miami. What do you think about what we have going on right now? I graduated from high school here. Rebecca, Alexis, we all graduated from high school here. And I don't think we learned anything really that was helpful besides the math and the algebra and all that stuff to actually be an entrepreneur, to actually go above and beyond. What do you think?
So I agree with you completely, and they did a study quite a few years back about why kids drop out of high school, and they surveyed dropouts, and the number one reason was not the social pressures or poverty. It was boredom.
That's it.
Boredom.
I can see it.
And kids are human beings, right? We're all interested when the conversation, when the learning revolves around us, right? When it has something to do with our lives. And algebra is a little bit difficult to relate to some people's lives. A brilliant teacher can connect algebra to, a child's life, but it's a stretch. It's a difficult thing to do. And what I always felt about entrepreneurship is that it's easy to connect to a child's life because you can always find something that a child is passionate about and be able to build a business around. And then from that, you have the hidden agenda, right? There's math. Yeah. There's writing skills. There's presentation skills, speaking. So there's so many life skills that can go into entrepreneurship but it's based on something that they can be passionate about. So
I love it. I think that's a huge problem that we have, that we're outputting a bunch of kids that have nothing to offer to the world. And I get it, college is very important, but not everybody gets to go to college. Not everybody wants to go to college, but we still make it that college is very important. We have to go. If you don't go to college, you're a bad person. You're not going to do good in life. I think it's BS in the sense of, is it a business? Do you really care about me going to college and getting education, or is it all about, hey, how can we get people to pay for student loans? And that's where we've been debating that for a while and trying to find a way to kind of help out a little bit. So what we've been doing with some of the schools is that, for example, at NIFTY, I love to be a part of that because I get to help some kids to, think about business as a possible career. I've been doing it with other nonprofits as well. And that's something I'm really passionate about because I think it starts there. If I would have had that chance to do something business related when I was in high school, I think I would be in a whole different position today because I discovered my passion for business, I will say, 2 years before I finished my college degree. And I was going to film school with Alexis, so it's that's where we met actually. And I remember I had a film business class that blew my mind. That's what completely changed my path. I didn't want to be a filmmaker anymore. I wanted to do business. So that one little thing completely changed my life. All right. So tell me a little bit more about after you had your nonprofit. What was the next step for you?
So the next step was that I ran Kid Ventures for about 3 years, or maybe a little bit more, but a decent chunk of time. And then I realized that as the kids were graduating middle school and going on to high school, they needed a sustainable program to work with while they were in high school. We were kind of making an impact in elementary and middle school, and then we were losing them in high school. So at that point, I approached NIFTY, the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. I spoke to Steve Mariotti, who was the founder at the time, or he's still the founder. He was the CEO at the time. And long story short, he said to me, Alice, we're thinking of launching a program in Miami. Why don't you come in and run it? So that was actually my first experience being more in the larger, that was certainly not the corporate world, but in a larger organization. And at that point, I launched NIFTY for high school students, and that ultimately grew to 30,000 kids over the years that I ran it here in Miami.
How long were you in NIFTY?
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years? Yeah. I started with NIFTY about 5 years ago, and it was thanks to you, actually. I think, I don't remember where, actually, I was working at MasterCard at that time, and they were part of the whole NIFTY. They were one of the supporters, and somebody came up to me and told me about NIFTY, and I was like, I'm definitely down for that, because I love what you guys were doing there. And I think it's really what we need, and we got to try to find a way to make a bigger impact in the kids, especially high school years. I think that's the most important time. That's when you lose most of them. That's when they start thinking that, drugs and being a rapper is the only way out of poverty, and all these different things. And I'm saying this because the time that I went to my high school, and we asked some of the kids, like, all right, so tell me about your dreams. Everybody wanted to be a YouTuber. It's like, it's okay to be a YouTuber, but it's not a career necessarily. Not everybody makes it big. And I think we're setting up the wrong expectations for people. They think that it's either, again, you go to college and you follow a traditional career path, or that's it. That's the only option you have. So how did you decide to leave NIFTY and then start your own business again?
Well, first of all, I just want to commend you, because you're really the poster child for what entrepreneurship can do for a life. I met you at the Idea Center, and you were actually pitching your business plan at the time, and that was probably about 6 years ago.
It was
maybe?
about 6 years ago, yeah. Wait, no, it was a little bit less. Wait, I want to make sure that I get this right, because I feel really old. It's like, wait, well, hold on, 6 years? There's no way. Was it what? 4? It was 2014?
14? 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Okay, my apologies.
No. I'm saying, like, time is flying by.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago. And I remember that time. Yeah. I remember when I met you there. I was pitching Marketing Connection at the time. That's right. And you actually connected me with Jeff Wilson from MasterCard. I
did.
So I appreciate you for that, because that also changed my life. So thank you so much for that. Actually, I said thank you a couple of times, and I always say thank you to you.
You're always,
because you gave me a big chance. And at that time, I asked Rebecca. We used to talk about this all the time. We were like, okay, should I do the startup challenge? Should I not do the startup challenge? Should I do it? And she pushed me to do it, actually. And then I met amazing people. I met you there. I met Jeff, thanks to you. I met a bunch of people there that helped my career a lot. So I forgot where we were, but
yeah, no, I just wanted to give you a little shout out, because you've come such a long way as well.
Thank you, and it's because people like you that believe in young people that were able to do these things. Because a lot of times, I've gotten many times that it's like, hey, you're 20. I was 21 at the time. Most people think that when you're 21, all you have to do is party and drink and enjoy life, but I was so focused on my business, and you actually gave me a huge opportunity that pushed me forward. That a lot of older people think that young people are not interested in, being committed to something. They think that you're just playing a game. And actually, I will say the two other guys that were in the startup challenge with me, they were just playing a game, most likely.
Yeah.
But at least you made an impact in my life, And I think we need more things like that, more startup challenges, more idea centers, more Nifty, more people like you, actually, because that makes a huge impact.
Thank you.
All right, after Nifty, how do you decide to quit Nifty and do your own thing again?
It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. Obviously, I was blessed to be able to spend over 10 years of my life giving back and working with kids and working on something that I was so passionate about. But at some point in my life, ultimately, I'm also an entrepreneur at heart, and
you can't keep an entrepreneur away from business too long.
I wasn't always able to be entrepreneurial
Yeah.
at Nifty. So I left. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, and then the answer just became crystal clear that, you know, we had this family business.
So I'm going through something like that in my life right now. So I want to know more. How was that time when you make the decision? Was it you had something planned already, and then you were like, okay, this day I'm going to finish Nifty, and then I'm going to go full on into my business? Or was it more like, okay, I'm going to stop this that I'm doing, and then I'm going to figure out what I need to do?
Definitely the latter. You know, sometimes when you're in it, you can't think clearly, right? And as much as people tell you, get your next gig lined up before you leave the last one, that's the perfect world.
We made the right decision. That was a very weak high five. Yeah, we did the same thing. We were like, okay, let's come up with an idea. We couldn't figure out what we were going to do until she quit her job. And now we're like, okay, now we have an idea of what we're going to do, because when your head is in the game for too long, you kind of lose a little bit of that magic that an entrepreneur has. So tell me more about that.
So I joined the family business. Honestly, at first, I thought I might just be hanging out there for a little while until I figured things out. But then I got reeled in, and I became passionate about, working with my family. Of course, I've always been passionate about my family.
How is that? Because everybody tells me that working with your significant other, working with your sons, sometimes it could be a problem.
And sometimes it is, for sure. There was definitely a transition at first where there was a lot of tension, and where we were just figuring things out,
right.
And where, sort of like the little dynamic that you have as a couple or as a family seeps over into your business.
Right.
And then you have to kind of set limits and say, no, this is a business and we have to act,
all right,
like colleagues.
Tell me 3 things that you learned from working with Ray.
Patience.
That's one. Okay, come on. Give me another one. I want to give, this is like a tip for people that are trying to start a business with their significant other.
Okay.
This is just for me, by the way. This is my personal consulting session.
Okay, 3 things. Okay, I already mentioned patience. Appreciate your significant other's skills and find ways to let them shine doing what they do and shine doing what you do. Okay. So it's really like any other business. You really have to kind of make sure that everybody's in their right lane, right, and everybody's in the right seat in the bus, and that that you do establish some clarity.
Okay, that's number 2. One more.
Gosh. I would say have a plan, even though the plan is going to change. The more you can map things out over time, and you can set some goals, just like any business. I think, a lot of what I'm saying here are the same ground rules that you would apply to any business, but they're even, just because you're a family doesn't mean you don't get to have those strategies. You need a business plan, you need a timeline, you need a budget, you need all of those things. And when you're talking about those things, you're talking about business, so you kind of have to step aside from the family dynamic.
How do you separate that? How do you separate your personal life from your business life?
Honestly, we're at our age, you don't. What else would we talk about? You know, you can only talk about kids and grandkids and decorating the apartment and, you know, where are you going to go for vacation so much. So, you know, I kind of got over getting, sometimes if we're sitting on the beach, I'll say, okay, you know, we really can't talk about the advertising campaign right now.
Right.
But for the most part, we're kind of okay with just, you
Right.
know, letting it be our conversation, letting it be our life, and being okay with that.
Yeah, that's another thing. I don't know if it's a problem or a blessing with me. I can't stop talking about business, and I'm sorry. I know it's probably tiring to you, but you know again, people try to put that harsh line between like, okay, personal and then business. It's like I don't think it's possible for a human being to completely forget a problem that happened at work, you know, or something like that, and then not talk about it.
I think, you know, your business is your passion, right? And so if you're lucky to share that passion and you can find a way to balance it in a way that doesn't feel heavy or burdensome,
Right.
then that's wonderful.
Right.
But, you know, you kind of also have to respond to those cues and you know, tell each other like, okay, enough already.
Shut up. No more business
I'm
talk.
done now, you know. So, you have to respect that too.
Okay, and how is it working with your kids?
So my older son is in the business. It's wonderful. It's, you know, it's an opportunity to watch him, you know, grow into his career and learn side by side. And we actually collaborate a lot now on technology. And one thing that I do want to say about, you know, being in business or really being in life at, you know, when you're getting a little bit older, I'm in my 60s now, is just keep on embracing learning. You know, never make an excuse that, you know, I can't learn social media
Right.
or I can't learn how to design a website because I'm older. Your learning curve is going to be a little bit longer, but you can
It's
do
amazing.
it. And
It's amazing.
And it's, you know, I'm now in charge, believe it or not, of designing our websites. And I collaborate closely with Max on that, and it's been a beautiful thing. It's been a great collaboration.
Yeah, this is where me and Alexis, we have this conversation all the time about our parents, for example. I think most of the time parents just kind of give up. I don't know if it's a drive problem. I don't know what exactly it is, but if I tell, for example, my mom, like, Mom, go learn social media, she'll be like, oh, I'm too old for that or whatever. She'll find every excuse to not do it, you know, and that's the reason why I get it. That not everybody has the same not potential, but not everybody has the same drive. And that's something you have to understand. But, oh man, imagine if our parents were like Alice, where we would be.
That's too much pressure.
Just think about that. I'm saying if you grow up with parents that are pushing you constantly, I mean, my parents did it. I'm not saying that they were bad parents or anything, but I'm just saying the difference in mindset. I know everybody doesn't have the same circumstances in life, but just, you know, thinking a little bit about that. You know, if my mom and dad were at 60 saying, hey, let's start a business, right now they're like, oh, we're too old, we're just waiting for retirement. How's life when you're just waiting for retirement? Is that something you think about?
I will never know what that's like. I will never know what that's like. I plan to work the rest of my life. I can't imagine not having a goal, not having, you know, sort of
Right.
a purpose, not having something to do when I get up in the morning, even if it's a tiny little thing.
Right.
I plan to work the rest of my life.
Yeah, a lot of people are just looking forward to retirement, and I guess just the mindset of you know, just work in a corporation your whole life and retire and enjoy life when you're not able to really enjoy life anymore, you know?
Well, I used to work briefly when we lived in New Jersey. I don't think I even mentioned that chapter, but we lived in Jersey for a few years, and I worked with an older gentleman who said some of the wisest things to me. And one of the things that he said was, and he was working into his late 70s and 80s, and he said, you know why I don't retire, Alice? He said, he's an older Jewish gentleman, he said, my friends retire, they die. So,
we've noticed that too.
So I don't want to do that.
Don't retire
that
ever.
That doesn't sound like fun
Ever.
to me.
That's another thing that I say. I don't plan on retiring ever. I know it's a little far away, but I just can't see myself not doing something. Look, I hate to wait in lines. just because I'm so like eager to do stuff that I can't just sit around and not do anything. That's what got me in the hospital for my 21st birthday, but I just couldn't stop working. I love to work. If you leave me, I just don't eat, I just work all the time because I love what I do. And I think when you're lucky when you find that, you know, if you,
I think so too, but I think you also, it's a combination of luck, and it's a combination of wanting that to happen, right? So, yes, you know, we're both very lucky, but I think it's also a skill to find your luck, right? And to recognize your luck,
right,
and then be able to build on that.
Do you think
right?
entrepreneurs are born or made?
That's a question that, you know, is way above my pay grade and probably yours too. But I do think it can be learned. I think happiness can be learned, right? I think, you know, if we practice certain skills often enough, we can learn them.
It's just because I hear people saying that, oh, I wasn't born for it, but you're not even trying.
Right.
So that's where the whole, are you born with it, or just some people just lucky that they love to have passion and follow their dreams, or is it something that you learn along the way?
I think that's a deep psychological question that, yeah, that is, like I said, it's above our pay grade. But I do think that there's many skills, whether it's entrepreneurship or just being happy in life, that, you know, if you decide, right, in relationships too, you know, since this seems to be like a relationship quiz, people have asked me how I spent so much time with my husband. We've been together for nearly 40 years. And my answer is that you decide, you know.
Right.
You make the decision. That whole thing about for better or for worse, unless it's really, really bad, you know, you decide. You just make that decision that, you know, this is my person, this is my life, and you build on it and you build on it. And then, you know, before you know it, at some point it becomes really wonderful, but it's not going to happen by itself. You have to make it happen.
It's a living thing that you have to feed, you have to take care of it, you have to work with it. All right. So now, where are you at? You left Nifty, you came up with this idea, or was it the business already started? Or
the business was already started.
Okay.
I came in 3 years ago. Initially, the goal was to build it into a technology-based company, possibly scale on a national basis. We learned the hard way that we really love being a lifestyle business.
Right.
And so we're keeping our focus in one geographic area, which you know, Orlando. It's a vacation rental business based in Orlando. We get to help families make vacation memories. We also have a focus on families who live with autism and developmental disabilities. But really, we're here for all families to help them make vacation memories in their own home.
Awesome. What is the hardest thing of starting a business at your age?
Just being willing to make mistakes, because you cannot start a business without making mistakes, right? And I think when at my age, and yes, I'm 62, so you know, let's get it out there. At my age, there's a certain expectation that you're supposed to be successful, right? You know, at your point in life, okay, you've made it, you know what to do. And when you're starting something fresh, you don't know what to do. You know, you've never done that thing before.
Right.
So you're going to make mistakes, and that's kind of, it can feel a little awkward, because people kind of look up to you and think, you know, this person isn't going to make mistakes anymore, but you do. So you have to be willing to go through
we're all learning and figuring out as we go.
That's right.
What is the best thing of starting a business at your age?
Really the same thing, just the constant challenge, the constant learning, the constant drive. If I'm feeling a little bit achy or a little bit tired in the morning, it's tough, you know. I can't just lie there in bed and
Right.
relax and say, well, you know, I'm feeling this way because I'm a little bit older. No, I have things to do. I have a business to go to. So, you know, I've got to just get up like any other person, you know.
What do people say? I know, first of all, we shouldn't care about what people say at all, but what do you think people say when they see it's like, oh, 62 starting a business? Come on.
I think, and you know, that's kind of it's been interesting working in a co-working space with a lot of younger people. There's a handful of people who are a little bit older, but most people are younger. And I think sometimes there's a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost a little patronizing,
Right.
you know. And a great example is that one day I was walking down the hall with my husband, and we were on our way to a conference room just to have a meeting, and a gentleman that I know well and I respect him and he's a friend, but he said, "You two are adorable." Okay, so you know that's just, he meant really well, right?
Right.
But I kind of made me feel like, you know, we're the, you know, it's not like I'm walking along with a walker, you
Right.
know, on the way to the conference room. It kind of felt like, would you really say that to women or,
Right.
you know, to younger people? So it felt a little bit weird, you
Right.
know, when people talk like that.
And another thing is that a lot of media, a lot of the people out there are putting a lot of attention on racism and females versus males, but we barely talk about age.
Yeah, and ageism really is a thing, and I would encourage entrepreneurs and businesses of all ages to hire people of all ages,
Right.
because there's so much knowledge and experience that can come into your business, and I'm happy to accept mentoring from a much younger person, but I'm also happy to mentor
Right.
a young person, right?
Right.
So as long as it's a two-way street, it can be such a rich experience for a working environment.
And diversity, I think, comes in all shapes and forms, not just color, not just gender. So,
Exactly.
all right. And what's the future for your business?
Well, we tripled our revenue this year, so we're really excited about that. We're just looking to grow and to serve more families.
You guys are getting a lot of press. I saw that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A lot of people are talking about your business. You participated in the Miami Herald startup competition, the business plan competition.
Yes.
You guys got were one of the finalists. So you guys are doing great.
We are.
And I love to see that, just because, you know, I know you, Max, and Ray, and I'm really happy to see you guys succeed, you know. And again, it's an example. I talk to Rebecca about you guys all the time. So we always put you guys as the role model to follow when it comes to having a relationship and also working together. Because I know that's probably not easy, but it could also be the best thing that you have, you know, because nobody's going to take care of your business like you do and your family do, you know. So I really look up to you guys when it comes to that.
Well, I think, you know, when people ask, you know, when people are really getting on in years and they're asked, you know, what about any regrets, nobody ever says, I wish I had spent less time with my family, right? Everybody wants to spend more time with family over the course of your lifetime. So if you have the opportunity to mix your work and your family and you can make it work, it's a tremendous blessing.
What's the biggest mistake you've ever made? She thought we were ending.
Curveball after curveball. The biggest mistake I've ever made. Wish I'd had a little time to prep for that one. Let's see.
No pressure. You got 10 seconds.
The biggest mistake I've ever made.
That doesn't mean you regret it. It
Yeah.
just means something that you were like, I shouldn't have done that.
Well, I mean, just recently, you know, deciding that just because, okay, I think this is I don't know if it's the biggest mistake, but we were swept into the sort of the tech entrepreneurship mindset because we're here in a co-working space, because it's hot and it's, you know, it's what everybody's doing, it's sexy. And, you know, trying to pursue that kind of national business growth, it turned out that it wasn't for us. That doesn't mean that our business can't grow. It can't be very successful, but, you know, our eyes were a little bit bigger than our pockets.
Right.
You know, over the past couple of years. And so we, you know, thankfully we were able to survive that, and we're growing very well just as a lifestyle business, which is wonderful.
And what about the best decision you've ever made?
Yeah, of course I have to say marrying my husband and having my kids. Yeah, no, I mean, family is, at the end of the day, it's everything.